Well, we go all the way now to Bokko's local government area where these attacks have occurred and speak with Mr. Luka Pampe, who is a resident there. Mr. Pampe, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise Daily. I do not know, were you there when some of these attacks occurred, or do you happen to live around?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I was in Bokko, particularly in Daho, just 2 days before that horrible event, I would say, occurred. And I went back again after it has happened to be able to see what is actually going on. But there are limits to certain areas that even at the time that I went back to Bokko, that I could go because even in the broad daylight, after that horrible massacre, there were still gunshots that were still heard, around some of those particular areas in the true sense of the word. And to give us a sense of what has actually happened in Bokko is to actually go back and look at the event and the horrible event of 2023. Where a number of people were attacked and killed in the same manner that this one has also occurred. And if you will recall, in April of 2022, in the same state, so that we can have a sense of what happened in Bokko, is the fact that over 142 people were killed around Kana, and then the Mangu incident also. So we saw the effort of the security in terms of those particular areas that I mentioned, particularly Bokko and Mangu share the same boundary. In fact, prior to the separation of, creation of Bokko, as it were, Bokko was under Mangu local government. So the sporadic attacks that took place in December, January of 2023, I would say, the fact that we are able to address some of the consequences of that particular attack, we saw perhaps the movement of certain elements, criminals as it were, from that axis who were given tough times by the security moving towards that particular angle. And I think we need to understand where Bokko is located. I heard you in your introduction mentioning the fact that Bokko is under Josad local government. No, Bokko is a local government on its own. In fact, it's a local government that borders Wamba on the other side, that is northwest in Nasarawa state. It borders Mangu on the northeast on the other side. And so when we saw the movement of these elements who, for one reason or the other, were chased either by the security or so towards areas like Mushu, they were able to move to the other side. And that is the northwestern part that share border with Nasarawa state. And here you'll be talking about areas like Mekatako, areas like Folok, areas like Manguna, areas like Daho, and the villages that are under those particular areas in the true sense of the word. And so clearly speaking, what has happened in Bokko, I would say, shouldn't have taken the security authorities, should I say, it shouldn't have caught them napping, in the true sense of the word. Because these are issues I expected that the intelligence that would have been gathered should have at least shown some sense of the fact that these elements are still hanging around those particular areas. And it must be noted by all Nigerians that the establishment of what I call super criminal camps or communities have given oxygen to these elements that often come out even in broad daylight to be able to attack communities in the true sense of the word. The one in Manguna and Daho, as it were, just like some reports have shown, took place in a broad daylight. It was around 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., in the afternoon, that movements of these elements were already identified and noticed by communities around those particular areas. So it wasn't as if all the attacks were in the night, when people were sleeping. No, it was in a broad daylight, when some of them have gone to farms, some of them have also gone for mining activities around those particular areas, leaving perhaps children and elderly at home who were massacred, gruesomely by these criminal elements in the true sense of it.
Well, Mr. Pampe, the correction which you, made about Bokko being the standalone local government area is taken. My colleague Kayla has questions for you.
Yes, really our condolences to everyone, because it's not the first time. On April the 2nd, we also saw attacks in Hurti, Josho, Dafo, you know, and what's brought to mind is the peace efforts of the state governor, because I know that sometime last year, the governor of Plateau State was trying to get the communities to come together so we can find out what's really going on, find solutions to these problems. What do you make of, you know, these recent killings and those peace efforts by the state governor? Would you say that those efforts have failed, or is there a different element that's been added to this crisis?
Well, it's relative to really respond to this in the affirmative, because if it has yielded the desired result, perhaps a lot of people will say that this carnage wouldn't have taken place in the magnitude in which it has occurred. On the other side of it, I would say yes, it has yielded some results, because a lot of people have also said that perhaps it would have been more than what we have seen in the true sense of the word. And to be fair to the governor, there are efforts that have been on ground since 2023. But I think that along the line, it appears as if we tend to lower down the tempo. We tend to slow down. We tend to tiptoe, you know, behind these criminals rather than taking a lead in trying to, you know, thwart any effort by these elements to be able to attack these communities in the true sense of the word. Now, if you look at the rate of attacks prior to this recent one, you could say that yes, there was a relative stability around those areas. In fact, Bokko has experienced some peace since this January of 2024, in the true sense of the word. We've not had attacks like that until the one that happened around February or thereabout, where some pockets of attacks were also reported around those particular areas. But I think where we seem to have gotten it wrong, despite all these efforts, is the fact that we don't do a clearance operation in most of these areas. And I keep mentioning this point because it's important for the security authorities to understand that the establishment of certain communities by these criminal elements, which I always call a criminal or super criminal camps in those areas, need to be cleared completely.
I want to talk. Let's not lose that point, Luka Pampe, because I remember that you ran for governor, or you wanted to be governor of your state under the PRP. Now, you're talking about something that many people have mentioned, but I want you to expand a little on that. You said these are called super criminal camps. Do the security operatives in Plateau State know about what you're talking about? And has there been any way that these super camps, and you said criminal communities, have been addressed by the security agencies or by the state government?
Yes. Well, I don't know whether the security is aware, because I'm not part of the security force on the Plateau. The best we do is, you know, advocacy, you know, to be able to bring to the knowledge of these authorities in the true sense of the word. Why I'm using that is that you will recall that when the Barkin Ladi and Riom incidences were so sporadic and so common at that time, there were a lot of, even on your platform, you know, a lot of people, including members of the National Assembly from Plateau State, who have appeared to mention certain areas around Riom and Barkin Ladi, where these elements usually stay, you know, and then launch their attacks from those particular areas. And you'll also recall that a lot has also been said with regards to the fact that in most cases, these people often come from certain communities that they have been able to capture. And I'm using the word capture carefully here, because there have been reports and incidences of land grabbing in those particular areas. So you can see that once those lands have been grabbed and they are able to settle in those particular areas, they establish for themselves a community. And for the fact that they are able to attack the neighboring communities and return back to that area, give you a sense of the fact that there is a super criminal camp in the true sense of the word. Now, if you take this further to places like Bokko, then you can understand clearly that these are not people that perhaps kept through the Wamba axis, through Farinrua, for example. Or you may not say that these are people who come from the axis sharing boundary with Panpan in the true sense of it. They live within those particular enclaves, those communities that most times they tend to attack them and run back to that places in the true sense of the word. So until and unless we're able to flush them out in those areas, we are not going to get it right as far as some of these issues are concerned. Yes, you can as well say that because of the pressure that was mounted by the security authorities on the plateau, on this particular element, they became a little bit calmer, over a period of time that we've seen. But the renewed attacks that we're seeing today has shown to us clearly that they still live within those particular areas and they launch their attack from there. I will say this and say this for the sake of posterity, that these people are not spirits. We are talking about over 70. The secretary to the government of the state has mentioned over 40 bites. But for us in those communities, what we saw, some communities have reported, is the fact that there were over 70 of these bikes. And you can imagine that if each of these was carrying about 2 or 3 persons on that particular bike, which is usually their form of transportation, then if it is 3-3, then you can be talking about over almost 270 to 300 people that attack those particular communities. So again, the question that a lot of people will be asking is, why is it that they have festered around those particular areas for such a very long period of time? And if you ask our people, communities, they will certainly tell you, Mark, that the reality of it is that they know where these people live. They know where these people come from.
Mr. Pampe,
yes.
Just so we can start to wrap up, there was something the National Security Advisor said yesterday. He talked about the role of communities. Where do you think communities may be dropping the ball? I know that we've talked about the security agencies, we've talked about the executive. And by the way, these super criminal camps that you're talking about, it would be nice to have a proper reports to the executive or to the security agencies and the state, just so we can have something that we're following up on as you continue your advocacy work. But back to what the NSA said. Are there ways that the communities may be dropping the ball? Because he said this is everyone's job and someone is dropping the ball in the communities.
Well, quite interesting that you raised that issue. To the best of my knowledge, most of our communities have done the best that they could in this instance, under the circumstances that they have found themselves. I want to say this to Nigerians, that the best most of these communities can do is to run. That is the best they can do. If you go to most of these communities, there are no even infrastructures that will support communication, even to the security agencies in the true sense of the word. You take some villages in Manguna, for example, or in Davo, you don't even have services or net telecommunication services in those areas. What responsibilities do you expect them to do? To take as far as this is concerned. So I believe that since the government is listening, there's need for us to develop these facilities and infrastructures in those areas to ensure for easy communication in the true sense of it. Then again, when you look at the road networks, some of those particular areas, there are places that I'm telling you, some of them have not seen tarred road, in their life, in the true sense of the word. There are no access facilities to those particular areas. But I agree that yes, communities have responsibilities. I also agree with what the Army Chief has said, that 70% is, of course, community and 30% is the military in the true sense of it. I agree with that. But what else can they do under a situation where they cannot even face the might of these people when they attack this community? Do you know the fury that these people come with? Do you know the kind of weapons that these people come with? Do you know the kind of speed that these people come with? Do you know the kind of wheels that these people ride as they go into these communities in the true sense of the word? So I believe that there can be little that the community can do as far as the current situation is concerned. All they can do is provide the necessary information for the security agents. But what is the response time of the security agents? Most of the time when you report such things, even when they are actionable intelligence that are volunteered by these communities, you end up finding a situation where the response time becomes very unfortunate. You find people coming after the ashes, after the food, after the people, after the houses have been burned to ashes. Then you find them, the security going to such communities as it were. So I think going forward, we need to look at deepening the quality of our infrastructures in some of these areas, in the true sense of it. We need to have more boots on ground, because I will tell you that if you look at the nature of those areas, some of them have not even seen some of these security agencies, except when incidences like this occur.
Well, Mr. Pampe, it's really an unfortunate situation in Bokko's local government area. And really, when one listens to what it is that you've had to say with regards to how these attacks occur, you say in broad daylight. clearly, there are questions around the motives of the attackers. What exactly are they trying to achieve? Big questions continue to reign in that particular area. But we have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning and telling us precisely what your account of the incidents that happened in Bokko's local government area, are. Well, thank you once more for joining us this morning. Mr. Luka Pampe is a resident of the state and also a former governorship aspirant on the platform of the PRP.